All right, JP, let's stay on hoops here, but move on to the college side of things. It's the battle of the J-Skers coming up tomorrow, Nebraska and Creighton. I know you watch both of these teams super closely. Who has been closer to what you thought they were going to be through the first 4 games of the season?
Ooh. That's a good question.
It is not.
So I think I guess I don't think either one. I think both teams are still finding themselves. I think Creighton with the kind of the lineup fluctuations and with Pop missing a game and trying to work his way back in, and then Mason Miller missing a few games, and kind of what that means for the rotation. And I think Creighton hasn't shot the ball well from three yet, which I don't expect to continue that much longer. So I think there's still plenty of room for them to kind of grow into what I thought they'd be. And Nebraska, I think the struggles that we've seen so far to an extent are some of the questions that I had, and kind of worries about where they might struggle. So I guess I'd say Nebraska, but I think some of those things that we see them struggle with, I think can improve. Like the 3-point shooting, like I know they were relying on a few guys to kind of carry that load, and that it wasn't going to be a great shooting team overall. I didn't expect them to be this bad. Like they need those guys to kind of pick it up, or it's going to be a struggle for sure.
JP, how much does Nebraska getting to the foul line and Creighton not being a team that fouls a ton factor into this matchup for you, considering how both the start that both these teams have got off to in that regard?
Yeah, that's the strength of these two teams, respectively. I mean, you just look at it. Nebraska is top 20 in the country in free throw rate, and Creighton is number 1 in not putting teams at the foul line. And I think Creighton's really, really good at that. That's something that we've seen year over year, particularly with how they played with Kalkbrenner there. They choose to not do a lot of gambling. They don't try to force a lot of turnovers, and they just play really sound basketball on that end, and really disciplined. I think Nebraska's probably has to find some way to win that battle in order to make this a good game, just with what we've seen of them scoring from the field. I don't think it's not going to be any easier for them scoring in the paint than they have, and they've been okay in that area, not elite by any stretch. They have not faced anything like what Kalkbrenner will present in the lane. So that is going to be a key in the game, and I'm sure that's something that Creighton has stressed heavily within their practices this week.
Yeah, Jacob, you mentioned they're going to have to win that particular battle if Nebraska is going to win this thing. Is there an indicator like that on the Creighton side where you say, hey, if Creighton does X, this thing probably went the way they wanted it to?
Probably knock down some threes. I mean, like if you win that, then it's just going to be hard from the math perspective to work out. And that's one thing that I'm curious to see what Nebraska's game plan is going to be. We saw 2 years ago when they won in Omaha. Obviously, Kalkbrenner being sick probably had an impact on that game. But also, like, Nebraska dared Creighton. They doubled. They decided we're not going to let Kalkbrenner beat them. They're sending help from the weak side on every post up. They're tagging every roll. They're doubling all the block touches. Like they were not going to let Kalkbrenner beat them, and they dared Creighton to beat them from three. And for whatever reason on that night, they just couldn't do it. Like I don't think that's going to be a winning strategy over the long haul against Creighton, but in a one-off, maybe that's worth the risk. It's like, all right, you hit 12 threes, then we're just going to lose. But if you're having an off night, then we're going to have a chance to win this thing. So and we know Nebraska, with the way that they typically play defenses, they do fly around. They do double team the post. And good ball movement will open up some threes against that. If you get the ball where it needs to go, you make the right reversals. So I'll be curious to see if they just kind of play this like they normally do, and maybe try that strategy again. And if Creighton, if you've got, we saw the Kansas City game where you had Isaac Trout, you had Jackson McAndrew both hitting threes in the same game. And they got up 30 plus in that one before kind of letting it slip back. So like that makes Creighton very hard to guard when you've got those guys taking advantage of the attention paid to Kalkbrenner with Trout and McAndrew in the weak side corner. Because you're helping off those guys, then you're just asking for trouble. So I'll be curious to see kind of the chess match between the two coaches and the strategies they use to kind of combat what the other's going to do.
Yeah, that's kind of my question, because both teams have the ability to play big lineups, yet it doesn't seem like it's either coach's MO, but it's kind of how the rosters have shaken out. Who do you think's more comfortable playing with size on the floor?
Well, I mean, Creighton, I'd definitely say Nebraska, that's just kind of what they've done. Creighton has kind of had to do some of that out of necessity just because of where the roster stands, and with Fedor Zugic not being eligible. That opens the door, and the Glet at the four spot, and just trying to get all those guys playing time. We've seen Jason Green play more at the three. He's obviously played a little bit of five in addition to the four, and asked him about that, and just kind of trying to feel his way into the season, and said it's been challenging, but he's enjoyed it because he thinks it'll help him and the team down the road if he can get comfortable there. But it hasn't looked great just yet. But I think on the perimeter we're going to see them be pretty small against Nebraska in all season, where you go Ashworth and Isaacs together, and then Jemiah Neal at 6'5" on the wing. So that is an area that Nebraska will have an advantage in if they play the way they have been with that bigger starting lineup, where Worcester's Mac made a joke about him being listed at 6'5", but I mean Ashworth is also listed at 6'1". So if Worcester isn't that he still has a bit of size advantage there. You got Juwan Gary. If you put Jemiah Neal on Brice Williams, who has had a great start to the season despite not shooting well from three, then you're putting Isaacs on Juwan Gary probably, and Ashworth on Worcester, and like those guys can. We know Worcester likes to get down low and kind of play some bully ball and score in the paint. You know, Juwan Gary, that's kind of where he makes his hay, and I think surviving on the defensive glass is going to be key, because that's an area where Gary can hurt them if he's got a smaller guy on him. If he goes and crashes hard, like they're going to have to be able to get that defensive glass to initiate their transition. So the good news is if they do try to take advantage of that size mismatch in the half court, you're probably going to have Kalkbrenner there helping out. So that's kind of the equalizer for Creighton's side of things, where they might be able to survive those mismatches size-wise.
Yeah, and conversely though, Nebraska has to guard those guys too. So Burke, whomever he guards, I think that's going to be interesting, because he's going to be playing a lot further from the basket on the regular than I think he's probably more comfortable to seeing. That little cat and mouse is going to be fantastic. JP, are you bummed? Are you excited? It's easy for you to transition, I know, to hoops because you're a hoops guy, but wouldn't you like to see this game played later than the Friday before Nebraska-Wisconsin?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen this in different spots in the calendar. It just makes sense with the MT coming up, and then you want to kind of ease your way back into conference play with the last few bye games or whatever. It kind of is what it is. That is such a Jacob answer.
That is such a Jacob answer.
I think it's okay. 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 I think it's okay I mean, they've had some time. I honestly, for Creighton, I think this schedule works out perfectly to where it just kind of ramps up. You had the 4 games to figure some things out, to kind of ease your way in the season. Now you get to face Nebraska at home, their first high major opponent, before they head out to Vegas for the NTE, where the competition is going to be pretty tough. So I think, honestly, for Creighton, it's worked out pretty well. And even for Nebraska, they had that St. Mary's game to kind of get ready for this one after getting a few kind of home bye games to figure some things out. So I think, honestly, with the way they schedule those NTs around the holidays, for the most part, it worked out pretty well for both sides this year, even if they are both trying to find themselves, like we talked about earlier.
Jacob, is Brice Williams good enough to be the best player on a team that wins their first NCAA tournament game for Nebraska?
I don't know that. I think he needs the other guys around him to play better than they have thus far.
Sure.
To make that the case. Like, that's the problem right now. Like, you look at that lineup, and he's the best 3-point shooter in that starting lineup, but he's the guy that you need to space the floor for, and he can't do both. So that's kind of where some of the lineups have been weird, and with bringing Esijan and Griffiths and those guys off the bench, and Berke not really shooting the ball yet, which they were hoping that he'd be able to do for them. I think the lineups are a little clunky, and he's had to probably create a little bit more. I think he's in a better spot now this year than he was last year, just with Worcester out there able to handle the ball and kind of run the offense. And so he's freed up to go score and get downhill, get to the free throw line and those types of things. Like, I think he's fine enough if the team as a whole performs better. Obviously, you'd like an All-American to feel great about your tournament stretch, but I mean, I think he's a pretty good player, and in year 2, that's why we're seeing with Creighton too. These transfers with multiple years, they're so important to being able to make runs. Because it is hard in that first year with the program, whether you're a high school kid or a transfer, to play to your full capability. It takes some time to figure some things out, to adjust to the league, to adjust to your scheme and your teammates and all that. So we're seeing that with Brice now taking a leap, second year playing at the high major level. We're seeing with the start Stephen Ashworth has gotten off to. We didn't really talk about him much at all, but he's been spectacular so far this season.
Yeah, he can go bucket hunt now. It's fun to see him. It's fun to see him in that role.
Well, and just the overall, like 16 points, 7 assists, 5 or 6 rebounds. Like he's been just impacting the game in so many ways this season. Like you say, he's just comfortable. He knows his role and he's able to fill it well. I mean, how many times when kind of maybe there's a little bit of mini run for the other team. They've had a few rough possessions in a row, and then he just like steps into a 3 off the dribble and knocks it down. And it's huge having that stabilizing force for Creighton.
I don't know if better is the word, but he seems like he's more comfortable and efficient ball handler too. Yep. One of my favorite things about this one tomorrow is it's my favorite thing about Raleigh. He looks like a guy that I would pick up at LA Fitness, and somebody's going to get 40 put on him. Like, it's just amazing just how crafty his game is and how comfortable he is with doing it. You know, he's got the little, he can go to the little dribble down, the back it down post game. He's just like a crafty old school.
I got that old man game.
Just pick you up at the gym and somebody's going to get smoked. They're going to say, I got that guy. And you're gonna get it.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting with Worcester and Ashworth, who they came in together at Utah State for Craig Smith 5 years ago, and both had pretty good freshman years, and then kind of went their separate ways from there. And here they are, their final year, going head to head here in Nebraska, and it's 2 completely different styles of playing the same position. So I think that battle is going to be kind of a fun little subplot to watch. within that game, just kind of how those two attack each other, assuming they'll be matched up for good stretches of the game. And again, Worcester's he's had an interesting start to the season. I think he scored a little better than I thought he would, but the playmaking hasn't necessarily been there. Obviously, it's hard to get assists if guys.
Yeah, they got to shoot. Yeah,
so,
there you go.
That's part of it.
Yeah,
but I think 1.8 assists to 3.0 turnovers. That's not the ratio you want from your point guard, and that is an area as a whole Nebraska struggled with is turnovers. Just killed them in that St. Mary's game. So I think he's hit a few threes by percentages, one of the best on the team, even though it's small percentage. So that's not necessarily his strength. So I think it's going to be fun to watch that for sure. They're going to need him to have a big game and to win that matchup in order for Nebraska to have a chance.
I got to take advantage of your expertise, young Jacob. We have to transition to volleyball since I say this tongue-in-cheek, but not really. I kind of are a volleyball state. Nebraska fresh off their sweep and Creighton doing what they do. But I got to ask kind of off topic here. Who do you think Wisconsin is? I know they had the 5-setter against Minnesota. You've seen both teams here recently. Do we like the direction we like the direction Wisconsin was moving? Then they ran into Nebraska, and it's like, oh, Nebraska's offense they can play pretty fast. That seemed to neutralize Wisconsin. Like for you, who's the next best formidable team in the conference, not named Penn State?
Yeah, with Wisconsin, the issue too that they've run into even since that Nebraska loss is last few matches they've been without their libero and their best defensive specialist. They've both been hurt, and I'm sure that's impacting. In that 5-setter against Minnesota, they're the fill-in at libero had 4 reception errors. So that's not great when teams are able to pick on your libero in serve receive, and that just makes it so. I don't know how they won it. They won that thing hitting 158, 20 to 18 in the fifth. So I think the answer to your question is probably Purdue. I think at full health, it is Wisconsin, and like you said, it looked like they had really kind of settled in and figured it out leading up to that Nebraska match, and then Nebraska rose to the occasion and played their best match of the season. So I think obviously Nebraska's already done with Purdue. They're done with almost everybody, which is crazy that we've got 2 weeks left here, or a week and a half even, three matches left in the regular season. But the way it is interesting that Nebraska, you have the one-off with Penn State at Penn State. If Nebraska goes and gets that done, they will certainly this will be kind of one of their more impressive, I think, conference titles. From that standpoint, as you top the competition, you got to go beat them at their place, and there's no fallback of we'll see them again in Devaney. So if they're able to get that done and clinch that title, that'll kind of say a lot about this team and what they've been able to accomplish this season.
You think Nebraska settled in on their rotation?
It seems like it.
Yeah, it seems like it seems like it is what it is, right?
Yeah, it just seems like Cook has decided to go with Landfair. Although, and then
after the first half of the season, right? It's crazy how this has evolved.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that Krause had the opportunity and didn't necessarily the last couple of matches just for whatever reason couldn't quite get it going, and then Landfair came in and had some highs, but also has struggled with consistency herself. And then we see Cook the last few matches getting the other seniors in the match, and Krause goes in and has 6 kills on 8 swings in the third set the other night. So
I'm always gonna cheer for her, like that. Just me, 100%. Like she just has that little spot.
Well, yeah, and I'm the same. Like covering her in high school and seeing everything that she's accomplished, and It's unfortunate when you've got a loaded team. Somebody really good is going to have to fit, and although we'll see if in tournament run here if Cook. I think at that point, I think Cook said he just wanted to find some consistency and give Landfair a chance to play through some things. But if she's out there tipping and missing shots in the NCAA tournament, I would not be surprised at all to see Cook go back to, all right, Lindsay, your turn. Let's go see what you've got, because at that point, you're not worried about someone building confidence for the future. You got to go win right now. And so he does have those options if we get into the postseason. But for the regular season, it kind of seems like he decided just to roll with what we've seen recently.
Jacob, more impressive to you so far this season, Nebraska's ability to stay laser locked and focused when really they just kind of got to get through the season to try and achieve their goals of trying to redeem that national championship loss, or Creighton with their 11th straight Big East national or conference title?
Yeah, that is crazy. I mean, obviously Creighton's the best program in that league.
They're so
we know,
silly with their pin hitters. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, we know how good Kirsten Berthel Booth is at what she does and what she and her staff have built the program into. Creighton should be winning the Big East every year, but it's still really impressive to go out and do it with the consistency they have and to not slip up and to be able to get up for the big matches every single time. So I think I'd say just over the long haul, the consistency and the ability to keep building up that roster and to find year in and year out new players to come in. And it's crazy what this this senior class has accomplished over the years, and they've got some good players kind of coming up and supporting them. So credit to Kirsten Berthel, but Nebraska, 24 straight wins, 17 straight in the Big Ten. Cook often talks about the Big Ten being harder to win than national championship because of the 10-week aspect of it. And here we are in Nebraska, pretty close to sweeping through the league.
That's our guy, Jacob Padilla from Hurrdat Sports. Jacob, we appreciate it as always.